that's a big load. You know what I mean? You're asking me what to do with your life. And surprisingly, it would shock you how many of those people come to us on a daily basis. And so like Dave said, this gave us an opportunity to share.
Heavy D Sparks and Diesel. Dave Kiley built a $1 million empire together. Then, almost as quickly as they became the kings of diesel truck culture, everything began to fall apart. Lawsuits, massive fines, an arrest, a marriage collapse, and a partnership that quietly unraveled while fans were still watching them smile on television. So what really happened between the Diesel brothers? Join us as we uncover the complicated truth behind their split. Two guys who found each other instead of girls. David Sparks, known as Heavy D, has always been the anything mechanical, obsessed guy that fans are familiar with. His first motorcycle was a 1976 Yamaha YZ80. He spent most of his high school years in auto mechanics, welding, and fabrication classes. After high school, he managed an ATV and motorcycle rental business for a mentor named Rich Eggett. He enrolled at Weber State University for 1 semester before concluding that he learned better through real-world experience than through a classroom. He started running heavy equipment for his uncle's construction business, which turned into running his own small excavation company. On the other hand, David Kiley, known as Diesel Dave, had a different childhood from Heavy D. He moved around as a child because his father worked on military bases. His family eventually settled north of Salt Lake City, Utah. In his late teens and early 20s, he served a 2-year proselytizing mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Portugal, supporting himself while spreading his faith. He eventually returned to Utah, reconnected with friends, and started attending church services for young single adults. That is where the two Davids met. It was a young single adult ward activity, a church event designed for unmarried adults to socialize. As Heavy D described it in an interview at the SEMA show, "We met at a church for a single people gathering. We were supposed to go there and find girls, and we found each other. It was a match made in heaven." Dave Kiley's description of the moment on the Sparks Motors blog is even better. He wrote, "This is where I actually met my brother from another mother, Heavy D Sparks. It was bros at first sight. His crazy matches my crazy, and we both were destined to be friends, and more than that, brothers." The friendship deepened through an incident that became one of the more famous pieces of Diesel Brothers lore. Dave Kiley was showing off for a girl and accidentally put regular gasoline into his diesel truck. A diesel engine cannot run on regular gasoline without serious damage to the fuel system. He called Heavy D, who came to help him drain the fuel. They spent that time bonding over diesel engines, discovered they had an identical level of obsession with the subject, and the idea for a business started forming. In 2008, Heavy D hired Dave Kiley as his first employee to help run equipment at his excavation business. They were landscape brothers before they were diesel brothers. They sold bunkers. They worked the used car lot. They went through a hiatus period. They were, as Dave Kiley described it, multiple kinds of brothers before the diesel chapter began. The diesel seller's operation grew from a small used car lot and diesel repair shop in Woods Cross, Utah, into something considerably larger as the YouTube and social media components of the business took off. They began filming builds, stunts, and truck giveaways. The audience found them. Jay Leno found the audience. Discovery Channel found Leno's recommendation. And in January 2016, Diesel Brothers premiered. But before we get to the show itself, here is the thing about how these two men operated together that explains why the partnership worked as well as it did for as long as it did. So what was the dynamic between them that made the whole thing click? The dynamic that made it work. Diesel Brothers premiered on Discovery Channel on January 4th, 2016. The show followed Heavy D, Diesel Dave, and their crew at Diesel Cellars as they customized and built diesel trucks, ran elaborate pranks on their team, gave away vehicles to people they deemed deserving, and generally inhabited the Utah diesel truck culture that had built their YouTube audience in the first place. It was immediately a hit. The dynamic between Heavy D and Diesel Dave that the cameras captured was the same one that had been running since the church singles event in Utah. Heavy D was the visionary, the one who pushed boundaries, the one who had ideas that were either brilliant or completely unhinged, and often both simultaneously. Diesel Dave was the everyman, the one who grounded the chaos, the one who made the audience feel like they were part of the ride, rather than watching from a confused distance. Heavy D described himself in interviews as always pushing the mechanical limits of vehicles, always asking what happened if you did the thing that nobody had done yet. Diesel Dave described himself as the one who helped make the crazy ideas actually work. The show made them both wealthy. Heavy D's net worth reached an estimated $8 million at its peak. Diesel Dave's net worth reached approximately $2 to $2.5 million. Their per-episode earnings during the show's run were reported at around $20,000 each. The Diesel Cellars brand, the YouTube channel, the merchandise operation, the truck giveaways that generated enormous goodwill and social media engagement, all of it was built simultaneously under the umbrella of the partnership. The show ran for 7 seasons through 2021. Somewhere during and after those 7 seasons, the conditions that had made the partnership viable began changing. And the single largest change, the one that put the most pressure on everything else, came from a federal courtroom in Utah. So what exactly was the Clean Air Act lawsuit, and how did it pull the partnership apart? The lawsuit that changed everything. In 2017, the Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment filed a lawsuit against Heavy D Sparks, Diesel Dave Kiley, and others associated with Sparks Motors, alleging systematic violations of the Clean Air Act through the removal and bypassing of diesel emissions control equipment. The allegation was that the shop had been removing diesel particulate filters and other emissions controls from customer trucks and selling those trucks onto buyers who then operated them on public roads, which was a violation of federal environmental law. The EPA's Clean Air Act explicitly prohibits tampering with or removing vehicle emissions controls. Heavy D's explanation for why customers wanted the modifications was practical. The diesel particulate filter becomes clogged at around 20,000 miles and can cost $5,000 or more to replace, whereas bypassing it costs between $500 and $1,000. From a customer's perspective, the financial logic was clear. From a legal perspective, it was a federal violation regardless of the cost difference. In 2020, U.S. District Judge Robert Shelby ruled that the Diesel Brothers operation had violated the Clean Air Act and ordered a financial penalty of $851,451. He also issued a permanent injunction ordering the defendants to stop performing or advertising emissions tampering modifications. The practices that had been central to the brand's most visually dramatic content were now permanently banned by court order. The defendants appealed. In December 2021, the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals reviewed the case and issued a 53-page opinion upholding the main findings of the district court. The appeals court used a language describing the conduct as flagrant. The court did find that certain aspects of the penalty calculation required further proceedings, and the penalty was later reduced by approximately $225,000 in January 2024. But the core obligation remained. Here is where the partnership between Heavy D and Diesel Dave began to fracture in a way that was not visible on camera, but was very visible in the directions of both men's professional lives afterward. The lawsuit had consumed years of Heavy D's time, energy, and financial resources. He was the named defendant in the primary action. The legal fight was his in a way that it was not equally Diesel Dave's, and the burden of it fell on him specifically. One source describing Heavy D's perspective on the split said he described the end of their partnership not as a single dramatic fight, but as a slow drift caused by different visions for the future. The lawsuit had consumed his time, energy, and resources. The injunction had permanently banned the specific type of work that had given the brand its most dramatic content. The path forward for the brand looked genuinely different, depending on whether you were the person who had been most directly in the lawsuit's crosshairs. By 2021, Diesel Brothers had aired its final season. The show was not renewed. Discovery Channel did not formally explain the decision, but the combination of the emissions lawsuit, the permanent injunction, and the declining cable audience for automotive reality content created a set of conditions that made renewing difficult to justify on commercial terms. And then, in October 2025, everything that had been building in the years since the show ended landed in the most public possible way: the arrest and the statement that followed. On October 7, 2025, federal authorities arrested David Sparks, Heavy D, on a civil contempt bench warrant. The warrant had been issued because the court's financial penalty from the emissions lawsuit had not been paid. According to court documents, he owed $843,602.23 in costs that had not been delivered as required by the court's orders. He was booked into Salt Lake County Jail. According to his own public statement afterward, he spent 3 days in solitary confinement in the maximum security wing. He said he had been preparing to board a jet to speak at an event on behalf of the state of Utah when he was arrested. He was released on October 10, 2025. The judge ordered his release after both parties reached an agreement that Heavy D would provide certain financial information within 10 days. The arrest itself was a civil contempt action, meaning the purpose was to compel compliance with a court order rather than to punish a criminal offense. That legal distinction did not prevent the arrest from generating enormous public attention. After his release, Heavy D posted a public statement where he described spending 3 days in solitary confinement in the maximum security wing. He framed the dispute as being tied to what he described as a broken system involving environmental laws and legal disputes in the state. He described it as an accountability issue rather than a guilt issue. The statement was the most public Heavy D had been about the legal situation since the original lawsuit had been filed years earlier. It was also the statement of a man who was clearly processing something more than just the 3 days in jail. However, Diesel Dave's response to the arrest and the legal situation was notably different from Heavy D's. So what did Dave Kiley say and do during the period when his former partner was being arrested and released from federal custody? Diesel Dave breaks his silence. In the months following Heavy D's arrest, Diesel Dave Kiley broke his public silence about the entire situation. According to TikTok content that began circulating widely in mid-2026, Diesel Dave spoke out about the arrest and the lawsuit specifically, saying that he was determined to pursue accountability and that this could not happen to anyone else. He described the situation in terms that suggested he viewed the legal proceedings not as a problem specific to Heavy D's decisions, but as a systemic issue with how environmental enforcement had been handled. Dave Kiley was not distancing himself from his former partner by calling out the violations. He was expressing solidarity around the idea that the punishment had been excessive, while simultaneously making clear that the partnership had reached a point of separation that both men had accepted. The language in the TikTok video where Dave spoke about his arrest suggests he was speaking about his own arrest experience rather than Heavy D's alone. This implies Dave Kiley also had his own direct involvement with the legal proceedings at some level, which is consistent with the original lawsuit, having named multiple defendants associated with the Sparks Motors operation. But while the professional split was complicated enough on its own, the personal dimensions of what happened to Heavy D in this period were even more significant. What was happening in his marriage at the same time the legal situation was consuming his professional life? The filing that nobody saw coming. David Sparks married Ashley Sparks, whose maiden name was Ashley Bennett, in August 2010. They had met at church in Utah in 2008. The couple had 3 children together, a daughter named Charlie Mae, and sons named Bo and Mac. Ashley had been a visible part of the Diesel Brothers world, appearing on social media and at events alongside Heavy D throughout the show's run and in the years following it. When celebrating their 11th wedding anniversary in August 2021, Ashley posted on social media and opened up about her relationship with Heavy D in characteristically direct terms. She said she used to always say to him that she loved everything about him, and that the last time she said it out of habit, she laughed and took it back, adding, "Actually, no, I don't." She described it with the kind of humor that long marriages develop around their own complications. But the observation that she no longer loved everything about him landed differently in retrospect. On March 10, 2026, Ashley Sparks filed for divorce in Utah. The filing came approximately 5 months after Heavy D's October 2025 arrest on the civil contempt bench warrant. No reason for the filing was publicly stated in the court documents. Heavy D did not make a public statement about the filing in the days immediately following the news breaking. The timeline of the marriage's ending placed it directly inside one of the most difficult stretches of Heavy D's public and professional life. The final season of Diesel Brothers aired in 2021. The legal proceedings had continued through the years following. The arrest had happened in October 2025. The divorce filing came in March 2026. Each of these events represented a significant loss of something that had been central to the identity that the show had built and that the years of building diesel sellers had constructed. The show was gone. The traditional business model had been permanently changed by the injunction. The partnership with his best friend had drifted into separation. The marriage had ended. The man who had described himself in every public interview as the lucky guy who got to do what he loved with his best friend was navigating a period that contained none of those elements in their previous form. And yet, consistent with the character he has presented throughout the entire arc of this story, he kept going. So what is Heavy D actually doing right now, and is the partnership with Diesel Dave completely finished? Or is there something still connecting the two men? What the split actually left behind? Heavy D Sparks continues to operate Sparks Motors, the automotive business that grew out of diesel sellers during and after the Diesel Brothers era. The shop in the Woods Cross, Utah area continues to take on projects, though the type of emissions modification work that had been the brand's most dramatic content remains permanently banned by the court's injunction. His social media presence remains active. His YouTube channel, which has over 4.5 million subscribers and more than 1 billion total views, continues to generate content and income even without the Discovery Channel platform. The audience that found him through the show has not entirely abandoned the digital platform where he had been building his presence before the show existed. He was on YouTube before Discovery found him, and he is still on YouTube after Discovery moved on. The emissions penalty that triggered the October 2025 arrest remained in partial resolution as of mid-2026, with the court proceedings around the financial obligation continuing after his release. The agreement reached at his October 10th hearing required him to provide financial disclosures within 10 days. and the underlying obligation was not resolved by the release itself. Diesel Dave Kiley continues operating in the diesel truck world independently. His estimated net worth as of 2025 is approximately $2.5 million. He built a hybrid biodiesel Ram 2500 in 2025, an unusual blending of sustainability technology with the diesel culture that has defined his career. He is married to Susan, known online as Diesel Des, and they have 3 children. He has been more measured in his public statements about the split than the clickbait headlines around those statements sometimes suggested. What both men have communicated through their individual trajectories since the show ended is that the partnership produced something real and lasting, both in the automotive content world and in their individual lives, while also reaching a natural endpoint that the legal situation accelerated but did not entirely create. They were always 2 different people with 2 different relationships to the same business and the same brand. The show put them in the same frame and called them brothers. When the frame came down, the question of what they actually were to each other after more than a decade of shared professional identity was one that neither of them had fully answered in public. Was the end of Diesel Brothers caused by the lawsuit? Or had Heavy D and Diesel Dave already begun drifting apart long before the cameras stopped rolling? And do you think the 2 men who once called themselves brothers will ever truly rebuild that partnership again? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.